Hello my beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. Today's a video I am very excited to do because I'm going to be ranking my recent 8 palettes that I have been using since the beginning of this year. I like to wear makeup every day and I like to use my existing collection. Every 4 to 6 weeks I typically sit down and rank all my recent palettes that I've used in the last period of time and tell you all about them, show you swatches, looks, and put them in a fun way of ranking. In this monthly eyeshadow palette ranking video, I typically try to include looks, swatches, and related videos. If I've made a dedicated video on any of the palettes that I am talking in the video, I will let you know of that, and I will have the video linked for you in the description box and the times and the cards here somewhere in the video and at the end of the video as well, for you to watch next. If all that sounds interesting to you, I hope you enjoyed this video and subscribe to my channel if you're not yet a subscriber. And now, without further ado, let's dive in. While I am chatting about all the palettes that I've used in the past few months, I just wanted to hear also from you, what have you been loving? What was your go-to eyeshadow palette or eyeshadow palettes? What has been your vibe lately? Share in the comments section below. I would love to hear from you. So and now let's get into it. I've done a declutter video at the end of 2024 and also ranked all my eyeshadow palettes for the entire year of 2024. Those are the annual videos that I typically do here on my channel. As far as today's video, this is the first eyeshadow batch palette video that I am filming in 2025. So I'm very excited for it because I have some beautiful, beautiful palettes in front of me. And it was actually very difficult to rank them because all these palettes are gorgeous. Usually the end of the year is always very overwhelming for me, and this past year 2024 was not an exception. End of the year is usually very busy for me between my work schedule and my personal life, and every year it just gets overwhelming. It doesn't matter how much I try to plan everything ahead of time, it just never works. It's always the same, hectic, overwhelming. And all that being said, I felt like towards the end of the year I really needed to give myself a little bit of a space to breathe and not to dictate or put too much of a strain of things that I must do. So I just kind of wanted to naturally use my makeup. I love makeup. I wear makeup every day, but when it came to eyeshadow, I felt like I was a little bit in a decision fatigue because my collection is so large. If you guys do not follow me on my Instagram, I invite you to do so because I do post there pretty much daily, and I do show you a lot of behind the scenes or makeup of the day type of things and talk about different products. Those are the things that typically do not make it to my YouTube videos. So I love to have you there on my beauty Instagram page. It's always linked for you in the description box. I mentioned that because I showed you my makeup of the day when I did have that eyeshadow palette fatigue or decision fatigue, and I basically used the wheel. I downloaded the app. I will put the name for it here on the screen for you. I downloaded this app and I just created few wheels on the base of my eyeshadow palette collection. And there were a few days that I knew I wanted to wear like neutral makeup. However, at that moment, I just could not make a decision of which palette to use, so I would just click on that wheel and it would choose the palette for me. And those are the things that I would share with you behind the scenes on my Instagram stories. That came in super handy. However, none of these palettes there in front of me actually fell into that very routine category. Most of these are new palettes that I acquired in the past, I would want to say 3 to 4 months to my collection. Some of them were sent to me in a PR, some of them I purchased myself. And there are also a few palettes here in front of me that have been in my collection for some time, but I just love them so much. And I reach for them specifically during winter times. You know, it has been a long intro, so let's get into the palettes. So, on the spot number 8, I do have one of the most recent launches from Natasha Denona. This is Natasha Denona Bloom palette. And I'm posting the picture for you here simply because I no longer have that palette in my possession. I've done a dedicated video on this palette and it's already live on my channel. You're more than welcome to watch it. If you've never watched a dedicated video of an eyeshadow palette on my channel, I go into very nitty-gritty details, talking about every single shade, breaking down the looks with swatches and giving you my first impression, final thoughts, doing palette comparisons, all 9 yards. So if you've never watched those, I will leave the playlist link for you in the description box. If that's generally a type of content that you're interested in, I encourage you to check out my playlist. Going back to Natasha Denona Bloom palette, the palette is beautiful. I think the inspiration was beautiful, like spring and petals and flowers. And she also took a little bit of a personal approach in designing the front cover of the palette. I really love Natasha Denona formula. I have a lot of her palettes and I have been purchasing all those palettes by myself. I always speak so highly and recommend that formula to you guys. And I still stand by all that I've said in the past. However, this palette, there's a reason why I no longer have it, because the palette had to go where it came from. If you watch the video, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. That palette was just a one big disappointment for me. Natasha Denona matte eyeshadow formula is beautiful and it's very user-friendly. However, what makes it for me in Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes, and what I always think it's worth the price, besides that her matte formula is just so beautiful and user-friendly, but her shimmer formulas are beautiful, or have been beautiful up till this point. I'm not sure what happened with this palette, but this palette just, to my opinion, did not deliver for my liking. Some shimmers were just dull. I definitely hold Natasha Denona brand, or what they usually deliver, up to a very high standard, because they are more on that like luxury price tag, and they have been giving us nothing but the consistent formulas. And she started introducing some newer formulas, but yet from palette to palette they were very consistent. Her sparkling foil shimmer formula is top notch. It's one of the best formulas just out there, period. And this palette just did not have that. The sparkling foils that were in this palette, they were just not the same that I know from her Yucca palette. For example, the palette was delivered to me and I just sat down to film right away with it. At that point, I had not watched anybody else's videos on that palette or with that palette. But after my video already came out and I did watch a few of the other creators I just wanted to hear what they had to say. And I realized that most people liked it. Most people liked what they got, and I feel like my opinion was super unpopular. I kept that palette in my possession for just over a week, and I kept playing with it every single day after I filmed it because I was very underwhelmed with the quality. I just kept playing with it. I did a few fun reels to compare it to other palettes. As far as the color story, I generally don't think that color story is unique, even though when I was purchasing the palette, of course I wanted to love it. On the picture, it looked like it was up my alley. I don't think it was necessarily super innovative to begin with, but it's Natasha Denona formula that we were talking about there. So I wanted to love that palette and I wanted to keep it in my collection. However, it just didn't serve. So I kept playing with that palette for over a week on a daily basis. And every day I would make a new look and I would get the same reaction. Like, nope, I don't love it. It's just not giving me the effect that I know Natasha Denona gives usually from other palettes. I, to this point, think, did I get a dud? Is that even possible with Natasha Denona? Because this never happened to me ever. In all these years that I've been having Natasha Denona in my collection, I've also never heard anybody else say that they would get a bad palette while everybody else would get a good one. So I'm not really sure where this all falls, honestly, because this is just kind of very unsettling for me that this even happened. And nevertheless, that was my experience. I had to return that palette. I could not possibly justify keeping it in my collection. And definitely the color story was not unique by all means, and the quality was just not it for me. On spot number 7, I do have a palette that is very beautiful. It has a beautiful wintry color story. This is the Frozen Kiss from Gourmand Girls. This format of the palette is so nice because it's so thin. This color story is definitely, for my liking, is very colorful and very wintry. Gourmand Girls have few different formats for their palettes. There has been a little bit of differentiation between the formulas between the palettes. However, this palette formula is really, really nice. Then there are also different shimmers here. I unfortunately do not have a dedicated video on this palette, but I do have some of the content on my Instagram. The formulas of shimmers here are a little bit different. So some of them like super bold and foily, and they're like so beautiful. Some of these muted shades, like this area right here, is definitely my favorite, and this lilac shade is absolutely beautiful. It's definitely colorful, but it gives you a little bit of versatility to do like more neutral looks, and I very much appreciate it. So in the spot number 7, I do have an older palette that has been in my collection for some time. Palette that I tend to take out of my drawers when the winter comes around. And I've used this palette quite a little bit back in January because it was kind of cold here. We had a little bit of a winter moment here in Florida for a few weeks, and it went down to almost like 35 degrees. I was going into my drawer specifically look for this palette because this just has a winter vibe for me. This is a Wild Jaguar from Huda Beauty. I don't believe this palette is available anymore. But this palette basically has 4 mattes, and one of them, this one in the corner, is basically like a lid setting shade for me. So basically I'm working with this kind of like a taupey gray transition shade, and this brown shears out, and then here is the black matte shade. So there's not too much of a versatility when it comes to the base of your look. So it kind of comes out like very smoky, pulling more towards a cooler tone. But I do love all these beautiful shimmers. This is kind of how I approach color a lot of times, or I used to approach color. And when I started my YouTube channel, I would always have a neutral base, and then I would put a different shimmer shade on my lid. Pretty much you would get a very, very similar base every time you use it. This shimmer is beautiful in the middle. It's this beautiful topper, mostly purple and silver, but it's also multi-dimensional. It's just so beautiful and reflective. And then the green, and then this beautiful, almost like gray slate. It's just so pretty. I very much enjoy reaching for this. Needless to say, you pretty much get a smoky eye every time you wear this. So the next palette up is a palette that I've been talking on my channel quite a bit, and the sister palette as well, but this is the palette that is definitely fitting more of a winter moment for me. This is an Ultimate Vintage Jean Baby from NYX Cosmetics. This is a drugstore eyeshadow palette. This has very beautiful matte formula. It's definitely more buildable when it comes to more of like a lighter and mid-tone matte, but the darker mattes actually have very nice pigment. They would give you a really nice like buildable depth. I also do enjoy that there is a neutral option. If you wanted to wear like a fully neutral look, you can. And this variety of blue shades is just so pretty. The blue smoky eye look that I created with this palette is, to this day, one of my favorite looks I've ever created. It's on my Instagram. The shimmers also are so pretty in this palette. They're just truly beautiful. This palette generally does not perform like a $20 drugstore palette. It definitely has a really beautiful quality. So I always recommend this palette to you guys. On this spot number 4, I do have a considerably new palette to my collection. This was a launch back in January, and this is Chamonix from NOMAD Cosmetics. I do have a dedicated video on this palette. Picture and the color story is just so pretty, and it definitely translates into the inside of the palette, the full color story. We're getting some beautiful pastels in this palette. I really enjoy the middle row here. It's definitely like my favorite color wise and intensity wise, and some of these shimmer shades are truly to die for. These 2 green shades are definitely my favorite out of the entire palette. They're just so special. To my personal eyeshadow palette collection, it's a quite unique color story. So on spot number 3, I do have a palette that is the newest one out of all these palettes that are in front of me, and it's just so inspirational in my opinion. I was like a little kid when I was playing with this palette and creating looks. I do have a dedicated video on this palette. This is a Fairy Tale Europe from NOMAD Cosmetics. This is inspired by castles, princesses, fairy tales, and all these classical fairy tale characters. There's some shades there are named after Prince Charming, Snow White, Cinderella, Belle, Sleeping Beauty, etc. Entire bottom row is matte neutrals, and I just really like this palette because it is a very approachable way to color. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, when I just started my journey with eyeshadows, I was primarily wearing neutrals, and then when I started getting to color, this is like how I got into color. I would still use a neutral base, and I would apply more colorful shimmer on my eyelids. And those were the first steps into colorful looks for me, where it felt safe. Because when it comes to quality, this palette is serving. It's serving different shimmer formulations. It has some multi-chromes. There's 3 multi-chromes in this palette, and they're beautiful. You get lighter shades. You get more like day wear appropriate shades if you like something a little bit more on a lighter side for your day looks. And you can go pretty bold and a little bit more smoky. I just think that there is considerably a good amount of versatility with this palette. So of course, to an extent, because you only have this many mattes to work with, and this is pretty much one color story and this is another color story, there are just so many different color combinations that you can do with the shimmers, and I think this is where the fun is within this palette. And the spot number 2, I have a palette that I've used so much. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen it countless times, and this is a Polar Express from NOMAD Cosmetics. This was their winter launch. This is just my color story. Shades that I really like. I don't use these blues too much, but this navy blue is gorgeous. But the rest of the palette is just something that I like to reach on a daily basis. I love the burgundies, and this neutral row is spot on. This row is just so gorgeous. This matte white already has a, I don't know if they can see it on camera, but there is like a huge dent here. I think I might be hitting the pan any day now, because this matte white has been used pretty much on a daily basis since November, December, when this palette was launched. The shimmers here are just beautiful, like beautiful. This formula doesn't fade, doesn't crease. The shimmers don't disappear. Like, you do your makeup look and at the end of the day it still looks the same. The formula is just so beautiful, and it's just very easy, approachable palette for me when it comes to my personal preferences. This palette has been sitting front and center because it's been used pretty much on a daily basis. So in spot number 1, I do have a palette that is very special. It's not new by all means. I had my eyes on this palette since the day it was launched. I wanted to wait for a little bit better time to get it. This is a very expensive palette, but I did not regret one single bit of getting it because this color story is everything. The formula is gorgeous. This is Mothership 9 Utopian Dream. The look that I'm wearing today is made with this palette, and I also filmed it for my Instagram, so that should be already live when you're watching this video. This palette is just so beautiful. This quad is just perfect for every day. Like, the undertone of this, the formulas are so beautiful. Like, this satin shade is perfect as a face highlighter, as your brow bone, as your inner corner. Such a beautiful satin shade that is like a high quality, beautiful satin. I'm generally not a huge fan of satins because there are just so many different beautiful formulas on the market these days, but this is a satin that actually still delivers. It's beautiful, and it's also multifunctional. You can use it, like I said, as a face highlighter as well. And then these shades right here in the corner, just stunning. And then this chocolate shimmer is to die for. And I really love this pop of color here. It kind of looks a little bit bright and scary. You can build this up to a brighter intensity like this, but it also shears out very beautifully. I didn't do a dedicated video on this palette, but check out my Instagram for more inspirational reels for you. So these are all the palettes that I had for you today to rank. These are all the palettes that I've been reaching for. They make me excited. All these palettes are so beautiful. They've been sitting here on my desk where I get ready for the past few months, and I just have been really enjoying them. Let me know if you like any of these palettes, if you have any of these palettes in your collection. What have you been loving in the last several months? As I'm filming this video, Pat McGrath, a new eyeshadow palette has been revealed, and I will be talking about it in my next upcoming new makeup releases video, so make sure you stay tuned for that one. I'll wrap up my video here. If you enjoyed this video, I will leave the playlist of eyeshadows here in the cards for you to watch next, and some other suggestions, and also we'll link all the eyeshadow related playlists in the description box underneath this video for you to enjoy. If you did enjoy this video, if you enjoyed my company today, give this a big thumb up. It does help my channel out. If you're not yet a subscriber, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel before you leave today. Click the notification bell so you're notified every time I upload a new video, because I do not currently have a set schedule, so every time my video comes out you will be notified by YouTube. And thank you so much for hanging out with me and watching this video till the end, and I will catch you in my next video.